6 future episodes spanning 30 years of production present wildly inconsistent, yet thematically rich, visions of the Simpson family's destiny. These episodes are officially non-canon, functioning as standalone what-if stories that explore the characters' potential fates without adhering to continuity. The result is a fascinating tapestry of contradictory futures, where Lisa becomes everything from a bride to the president, Bart cycles between deadbeat dad and Supreme Court justice, and Maggie remains perpetually silent despite being called the voice of her generation. Homer Simpson, the dead man who keeps getting cloned. Homer Simpson either becomes the wise patriarch who finally gets his life together, or he dies so many times he has to be cloned over and over until his consciousness gets uploaded to a computer. Both futures exist. Neither makes complete sense with the other. Here's what actually happens to Homer across 6 different future episodes spanning from 2010 to 2041. In season 6's Lisa's Wedding, Homer is still working at Springfield Nuclear Power Plant in the year 2010. Still in Sector 7G. Still the same job he's had for decades. The plant runs thanks to the lengthy appeals process, and he now reports to Milhouse Van Houten, who he calls Mr. Milhouse. He's living at 742 Evergreen Terrace with Marge, having added dormer windows and an unpermitted guest bedroom. When Lisa gets engaged, Homer gives her pig-shaped cufflinks that Grandpa gave him on his wedding day, along with one of the most heartfelt speeches in Simpsons history. He tells Lisa, "You're my greatest accomplishment, and you did it all yourself." When her fiancé Hugh refuses to wear the cufflinks, Homer lies to protect Lisa's feelings, saying, "I found them on the nightstand this morning." Flash forward to Bart to the future in 2030. Homer's living at the White House after Lisa becomes president. He's obsessively searching for Lincoln's gold with a pickaxe and has acquired a robotic prostate. Then comes future drama in 2013, where everything falls apart. Homer and Marge have separated. He blew the family savings on an underwater house where he lives alone with flounders who steal his lawn chair. He owns the first hover car ever made, which is so poorly designed it just drags along the ground. Marge starts dating Krusty the Clown. Homer wins her back by getting beaten up by Krusty at Bart and Lisa's graduation, proving he still cares through physical violence like the romantic he is. By 2041, in Holidays of Future Past, elderly Homer has completely changed. He's retired and builds spaceships, in bottles, including replicas from 2001 and Futurama. Most shockingly, he's quit drinking. When Lisa asks about his hobby, Homer admits, "I'd smash them all for one beer," but the hobby keeps him sober. He delivers genuine wisdom to his grandsons about fatherhood. He introduces them to great-grandpa Simpson, who's frozen in a cryogenic tube in the basement. Then, Days of Future Future happens. Homer dies, gets cloned by Professor Frink, dies again, gets cloned again. The death montage shows clone number 2 dying from eating too much potato salad, clone number 5 electrocuting himself with a toaster in the bathtub, and clone number 73 falling to his death while trying to stack dead Homers at Costco to reach bulk popcorn on the top shelf. When cloning becomes impossible, Homer's consciousness gets transferred to a flash drive. He becomes just a face on a screen. Marge eventually electrocutes herself to join him digitally, which Moe observes might be love, suicide, or a really boring video game. The contradictions are impossible to reconcile. Homer can't simultaneously be a wise, sober grandfather building model ships and a guy who dies 73 times from stupidity before becoming a digital ghost. The writers chose completely different futures for the same character, depending on what story they wanted to tell. One version explores Homer's capacity for growth and redemption. The other version takes his stupidity to its logical extreme where death itself can't stop him from being an idiot. But if Homer's future seems confusing, wait until you see what happens to Marge. Marge Simpson. The forgotten woman who sacrificed everything. More depressing. Marge Simpson either remains exactly the same housewife she's always been for 30 years straight, or she electrocutes herself to death to join her husband's digital consciousness in a computer. The writers basically forgot she exists as anything other than Homer's wife. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Marge's future. Across 6 episodes spanning 3 decades of potential timeline, she gets almost zero character development. In season 6's Lisa's Wedding, set in 2010, Marge is still a housewife, still managing the family, still dealing with Homer's stupidity. She obtains a court order preventing Homer from planning Lisa's wedding because she knows he'll ruin it. When Lisa video calls home, Marge forgets her daughter can see her and crosses her fingers while promising to control Homer at the wedding. She still dyes her hair blue. She gives Lisa a lock of her hair as something blue for the ceremony. She offers memorably terrible British advice, telling Lisa, remember, an elevator is called a lift, a mile is called a kilometer, and botulism is called steak and kidney pie. Bart to the Future in 2030 shows Marge doing laundry at the White House, presidential logo baskets, babysitting granddaughter Maggie Jr. That's her entire role. The showrunner Mike Scully later admitted it was slightly disturbing to see an aged Marge, but they didn't actually give her anything meaningful to do. Then comes Future Drama in 2013, where Marge finally gets something resembling a storyline. She separates from Homer after he blows the family savings. She starts dating Krusty the Clown. For one brief episode, Marge has an actual arc about leaving an irresponsible husband, but she takes Homer back after watching Krusty beat him up, which apparently proves Homer's devotion. During this episode, she demonstrates that scientists have invented magic by turning a Polaroid photo into instant cake, which is the most character development she receives. By Holidays of Future Past in 2041, Marge is an elderly grandmother receiving B-mail, which is brain mail sent directly to her brain. She enjoys quiet Christmases with Homer and advises adult Lisa about parenting teenage Zia. Her wisdom? Leave Zia alone. That's it. Lisa ignores this advice, creates a disaster, then realizes Marge was right. Marge's role has become wise grandmother who everyone ignores. In Days of Future, Marge watches Homer die repeatedly from increasingly stupid causes. She grows frustrated, ejecting his flash drive and giving it to Bart. When Homer's consciousness gets trapped in a computer, Marge makes the most extreme decision in any future episode. She deliberately electrocutes herself with the same toaster that killed clone number 5, uploading her consciousness to join digital Homer. Her final advice to her adult children captures her entire character across 30 years. When you make a decision with your heart, you stick with it. The pattern is undeniable. Marge gets almost nothing. While Homer explores growth, stupidity, death, cloning, and digital consciousness, Marge remains the stable center who reacts to everyone else's drama. The writers position her as the heart of the family, but forget to give that heart any actual desires beyond supporting others. Her most dramatic moment is literally killing herself to stay with Homer, which is somehow both the most romantic and most depressing future they could have written for her. But at least Marge remains consistently characterized across episodes. Bart's future is an absolute train wreck of contradictions that makes zero sense no matter how you look at it. Bart Simpson, the boy who becomes either a Supreme Court justice or a deadbeat dad. Bart Simpson either becomes Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, or he ends up as a twice-divorced deadbeat living in his old elementary school building, unable to hold minimum wage jobs and selling his organs to pay rent. Both futures are shown on screen. The writers can't decide if Bart has potential or if he's destined to fail. Here's where it gets completely contradictory. In Season 6's Lisa's wedding set in 2010, 25-year-old Bart works as a building demolition expert. He operates wrecking balls, crushes cars, and promotes tough man contests. He's been divorced twice and is already looking for wife number 3, mentioning he met a really nice exotic dancer. But here's the critical detail everyone misses. Bart explicitly tells Lisa he's planning to go to law school. He says, basically, yeah, I'm getting out all my aggression till I go to law school. This references the Season 4 episode Itchy and Scratchy the Movie, which showed 50-year-old Bart as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The implication is clear. This version of Bart is on a redemptive path. He's working construction jobs, burning off his youthful energy, but he has an actual plan for his future. Then Bart to the Future happens in 2030 and destroys everything. 40-year-old Bart dropped out of Devry Institute. He leads a failed band called Captain Bart and the Tequila Mockingbirds with Ralph Wiggum, performing Jimmy Buffett ripoffs like Wasted Once More in DeQueerville. They get paid in popcorn shrimp. They live in a beach cottage until they get evicted. Bart survives by mooching off everyone, his parents. Blind neighbor Ned Flanders, who doesn't realize Bart is stealing from him. Eventually President Lisa at the White House. His catchphrase becomes, "What happened to you? You used to be cool." The episode presents Bart as a cautionary tale about wasted potential. Writer Dan Greaney specifically conceived it to explore what happens to a guy like Bart who doesn't pay attention to schoolwork and is all about being cool. By Holidays of Future Past in 2041, Bart is a complete deadbeat. He lives at the lofts at Springfield Elementary, which is his old school converted to apartments. Seymour Skinner is his landlord demanding rent. Bart mentions selling his good kidney because the other will grow back. He can't hold any jobs. Days of Future shows him working at Cretaceous Park, a dinosaur theme park that's now correctly named, but it's clearly another dead-end position. His two sons, Jiff and Skippy, openly despise him. They prefer their mother's new husband, who's great at untangling Christmas lights, unlike their father. The boys have telepathic abilities and read Bart's thoughts when he plans to dump them at Mom's house. They call him out constantly. One Christmas, his actual plan is to abandon his children with his elderly parents. The romantic contradictions are even worse. Lisa's wedding has him divorced twice by age 25. Future drama introduces Jenda, his high school girlfriend who rejects his proposal. Holidays of Future Past shows he eventually married Jenda, but they're now divorced. The writers created two completely incompatible versions of Bart. One version has him going to law school and becoming Chief Justice. The other version has him as a perpetual failure who never grows up. They reference both futures, but never commit to either one. It's like they couldn't decide if Bart deserves redemption or punishment for being the troublemaker he is. But if Bart's future seems like a mess of contradictions, Lisa's timeline is somehow even more confusing, because the writers can't figure out who she marries, what career she has, or even what year she graduates college. Lisa Simpson, the overachiever who can't figure out who to marry. Lisa Simpson either marries a British environmentalist named Hugh Parkfield, or she becomes President of the United States, or she marries Milhouse Van Houten and has his daughter, M, or she marries Milhouse, but the daughter isn't actually his, or she ends up with Nelson Muntz instead. The writers have given her 5 different romantic futures and 3 completely different careers that contradict each other. Here's the breakdown. In season 6's Lisa's Wedding, set in 2010, 23-year-old Lisa attends an Eastern university studying environmental science. She's described as the only Springfield Elementary graduate to read at an adult level. At a library, she meets Hugh Parkfield, a charming British student voiced by Mandy Patinkin. They fall in love over a shared book. He proposes, she accepts. They plan the wedding. Everything seems perfect until Hugh reveals his true attitude toward her family. He refuses to wear Homer's pig cufflinks and admits he plans to take Lisa to England, where she'll never see her family again. Lisa calls off the wedding. The episode ends with her single, choosing family over romance. Interestingly, when Lisa worries about wearing white at her wedding, Marge dismissively says Milhouse doesn't count, implying Lisa previously had some kind of intimate relationship with him that apparently doesn't matter. Future drama in 2013 shows yet another version. Lisa dates a muscular Milhouse who saved her from a house fire when they were 12 years old. Plot twist: Milhouse started the fire himself to become her hero. When Lisa discovers this and dumps him at their senior prom, Milhouse has an incredible Hulk-style meltdown, fighting off 4 Robocops while screaming, "Why did Lisa dump me? Is it because of my small calves? They're the hardest place to add mass." This version of their relationship ends in complete disaster. Bart observes, "I remember when you were a nerdy little 4th grader, and now you're an emotionally crippled mini Hulk." When Bart uses Professor Frink's machine to see Lisa's future, it shows her accepting Milhouse's proposal out of desperation, leading to a miserable marriage. Bart sacrifices his own scholarship to prevent this timeline from happening. But at least Lisa gets multiple futures to choose from. Maggie's future is even stranger, because despite becoming incredibly famous and successful, she literally never speaks on screen. Maggie Simpson, the voice of her generation who never gets to speak. Maggie Simpson becomes one of the most successful members of the entire family, achieving international fame as a rock star while being called the voice of her generation. But across 30 years of future episodes, she never speaks a single word on screen. The writers turned her silence into the show's longest-running future gag. Here's how the gag works. In season 6's Lisa's Wedding, set in 2010, 15-year-old Maggie appears as a punk teenager wearing a denim jacket, black t-shirt, and red pants. She wears her iconic pacifier as a necklace. According to Homer, Maggie talks constantly. He complains, "Will that girl ever shut up?" implying teenage Maggie never stops talking. She's always on the phone. Multiple characters mention she has an incredible singing voice, but the audience never hears it. The first time Maggie is about to speak, Marge interrupts her. Don't talk with your mouth full. Later, Maggie prepares to sing Amazing Grace at Lisa's wedding. She stands at the microphone, opens her mouth, then Hugh cancels the wedding and the ceremony ends. The gag is complete. Maggie definitely talks in this future, but something always prevents the audience from hearing it. Bart to the Future in 2030 doesn't feature adult Maggie at all. Instead, her baby daughter Maggie Simpson Jr. appears, looking identical to infant Maggie with her pacifier. A deleted scene showed adult Maggie as an astronaut on the moon, wearing a breathing device that resembled a pacifier, but this was cut from the final episode. Future drama briefly mentions Maggie is vacationing in Alaska, where climate change has created beach weather, but she doesn't appear on screen. Then comes Holidays of Future Past in 2041. 31-year-old Maggie is now a famous rock star who just played a sold-out show in Beijing. She's literally called the voice of her generation, but when she arrives home for Christmas, she cannot speak. A Medbot medical robot scans her and reveals, new research shows the umbilical cord is also a vocal cord. Maggie is pregnant and the robot prohibits her from making any sounds until she gives birth, warning that speaking could harm the baby. On Christmas Eve, Maggie delivers Maggie Simpson Jr. Same name, same appearance, same pacifier. The father's identity is never revealed, though Days of Future Future hints it might be Gerald Sampson, the unibrow baby who was Maggie's rival throughout the original series. The pattern is perfect. Every single future episode finds a new excuse for why Maggie can't speak. She's interrupted. The scene ends. She's not on screen. She's medically prohibited from talking. The writers committed to this gag across 20 years of production, spanning 1995 to 2014. They made Maggie successful, famous, and important in every timeline. They made her a rock star whose voice defines a generation, but the audience never gets to hear that voice. It's simultaneously the show's most elaborate running joke and its most frustrating one. But if Maggie's silence is frustrating, Milhouse's entire future existence is somehow even more pathetic, because this man goes from Homer's supervisor to Lisa's cabinet member to her zombie husband, and he never stops being completely pathetic. Milhouse Van Houten, from supervisor to zombie husband. Milhouse Van Houten either becomes Homer's boss at the nuclear plant, or he serves as Lisa's top cabinet advisor, or he transforms into a bodybuilding Incredible Hulk, or he marries Lisa and becomes a zombie. Across every future timeline, one thing remains constant. Milhouse is still pathetically devoted to Lisa, and still completely pathetic. Here's the progression. In season 6's Lisa's Wedding, set in 2010, Milhouse has achieved something resembling success. He's Homer's supervisor at Springfield Nuclear Power Plant. When Homer mentions Lisa's engagement, Milhouse mournfully responds, "Lisa, oh, my one true love," and threatens to write a bad performance evaluation. The show includes a flashback to teenage Lisa explicitly rejecting him. She tells Milhouse, "It's not you, Milhouse. I just don't plan to ever get married." Milhouse has spent 15 years working at the plant, still pining for a woman who told him she would never marry anyone. His pathetic devotion survives into adulthood, even though he knows it's hopeless. Bart to the Future, in 2030, elevates Milhouse to actual political power. He serves as Secretary Van Houten in President Lisa's cabinet. He creates the term temporary refund adjustment to disguise a massive tax hike, demonstrating genuine political skill. When Lisa praises his idea, Milhouse asks hopefully, "What else do you love, Lisa?" She responds with brutal efficiency, fiscal solvency. Even as her top advisor with real influence and power, Milhouse remains romantically interested, and Lisa remains completely uninterested. He's climbed to one of the highest positions in government, and he still can't get the girl. The pattern is clear. Every version of Milhouse's future involves him achieving some form of success while remaining completely pathetic in his devotion to Lisa. He becomes her boss, her cabinet secretary, her muscular boyfriend, her husband, and finally, her zombie husband. In every timeline, he loves her. In most timelines, she barely tolerates him. The writers couldn't decide if Lisa eventually settles for Milhouse or continues rejecting him, so they just showed both outcomes in different episodes. But at least Milhouse gets multiple futures. Mr. Burns only gets one consistent fate across every episode, and it involves being repeatedly stabbed, frozen, and eventually extracting people's souls. Mr. Burns, the man who gets stabbed 17 times and still won't die. Mr. Burns either gets frozen in a cryogenic tube after receiving 17 stab wounds in the back, or he lives to age 134 running a business that extracts people's souls. The show can't decide if Burns dies or becomes literally immortal. Here's what happens to Springfield's oldest villain. In season 6's Lisa's Wedding, set in 2010, Burns has been cryogenically frozen after being stabbed 17 times in the back. It's a Julius Caesar reference that the show plays completely straight. Professor Frink and other scientists are working on a cure, and they've successfully healed 15 of the 17 stab wounds. At Lisa's wedding, Smithers wheels the frozen Burns as his +1 guest. Burns complains, "I'm not fully defrosted," before his entire bottom half breaks off and shatters on the floor. He screams, "Ow! I can't feel anything below my cummerbund." The implication is clear: someone murdered Burns, stabbed him 17 times, and instead of dying, he got frozen to preserve his life until medical science could heal the wounds. But then future drama in 2013 contradicts everything. Burns is alive and 112 years old. He's a shut-in who's not looking any older, according to Smithers. He lives in his mansion surrounded by 4 forbidden zones: radioactive, smallpox, eternal midnight, and an area swarming with uniclams. Burns funds Lisa's Yale scholarship as punishment for stealing Christmas, which he apparently never gave back, referencing a past episode. He's weak and frail, but definitely not frozen, definitely not healing from stab wounds, just old and alive. The writers clearly couldn't decide what to do with Burns. Do they kill him off through murder? Do they make him immortal through sheer evil? Do they have him running hell-adjacent businesses? They chose all 3 options across different episodes. Burns represents capitalism's refusal to die, no matter how many times you stab it in the back. But if Burns' future seems dark, Grandpa Simpson's fate is somehow even more depressing, because the family either forgets he exists entirely, or they freeze him to save money on nursing home costs. Grandpa Simpson, the forgotten father, frozen to save money. Grandpa Simpson either dies sometime before 2010 and nobody mentions it, or he's cryogenically frozen in the basement because freezing him is cheaper than paying for a nursing home. The family's treatment of Grandpa in the future is the darkest running joke across any of these episodes. Here's what actually happens. In season 6's Lisa's Wedding, set in 2010, Grandpa is completely absent. He doesn't appear at Lisa's wedding. Nobody mentions him. When Homer gives Lisa the pig-shaped cufflinks, he explains, "Grandpa gave these to me on my wedding day." Past tense. The implication is unavoidable. Grandpa has died, the family moved on. Homer kept the cufflinks as a memento, but Grandpa himself is gone. The show doesn't explicitly confirm his death, but his total absence from such a major family event speaks volumes. Bart attends the wedding, Maggie attends, even frozen Mr. Burns, wheeled in by Smithers, attends. But not Grandpa. Bart to the Future in 2030 doesn't address Grandpa's status at all. He neither appears nor gets mentioned. When the family visits President Lisa at the White House, Grandpa's nowhere to be seen. Either he's still dead or the family simply forgot to invite him. Then, Holidays of Future Past in 2041 reveals the truth. Grandpa is alive but cryogenically frozen in Springfield Cemetery's underground facility. Homer takes his grandsons to visit. When the boys ask about Great Grandpa Simpson, Homer explains, "We had him frozen. He has some disease that they'll cure in the future." One of the boys asks, "Why not cure him now?" Homer admits the real reason: cryogenics is much cheaper than a nursing home. Let that sink in. The family froze Grandpa not because it's the best medical option, but because it costs less than proper elderly care. When Homer briefly unfreezes him to say hello, Grandpa immediately complains. Homer freezes him again mid-sentence. Later in the episode, Homer actually reconciles with frozen Grandpa after realizing he's becoming the same kind of father to Bart that Grandpa was to him. The final family Christmas photo shows Grandpa unfrozen and present. It's the only genuinely heartwarming moment in Grandpa's entire future. But Days of Future undoes even that small victory. Grandpa appears being held hostage by a hacked driverless car. Jenda rescues him because she works at Google's Autonomous Vehicle Victim Rescue Division. The implication is Grandpa remains alive but still vulnerable and still largely forgotten by the family who put him in danger by using faulty technology. The pattern is consistent. Grandpa either dies and nobody talks about it, or he gets frozen to save money, or he survives but remains perpetually endangered by his family's neglect. The writers couldn't decide which fate was darker, so they showed all three across different episodes. Every version treats Grandpa as an afterthought. Even in episodes where he's technically alive, the family only interacts with him out of obligation or guilt. But if the individual character futures seem contradictory, wait until you see how the timelines themselves completely fall apart. Because these episodes don't just contradict each other on character details. They contradict fundamental facts about when events happen and in what order. If you enjoyed this video and want to see what